It's another Manly Monday, and this Manly Monday, I'm starting with Mortimer because it is Deranged Opossum Fall, and Mortimer has turned out to be quite popular. So here is Morty for all of the Morty fans out there. There you go. He's just gonna go to sleep now, right, buddy? Tummy rubs. Good. I meant anthropomorphizing a stuffed possum. Anyway, so we're talking about this comment that Barack Obama made while campaigning for Kamala Harris that has ruffled some feathers, shall we say, ruffled some feathers. And I want to talk about one, why, two, why I think he's actually got it backward. But let's get to the quote in itself. Right. By the way, if you like this content, support the crowdfund to save Eileen's aunt's house. We're doing some Spider-Man shit. We're saving an old lady's house. I love how Spider-Man shit has caught on. We might have to do some Spider-Man shit. Or that's some Spider-Man shit or something like graphic. I don't know. Maybe if we make the goal Eileen can do, we did some Spider-Man shit. I don't know. A logo. We'll talk. But if you like this, kick a couple bucks or pesos. The crowdfund is in pesos. We're getting there. We're getting there. We're getting there. Okay, so the quote is, you're thinking about sitting out or supporting somebody who has a history of denigrating you. He's talking about Trump. Because you think that's a sign of strength. Because that's what being a man is, putting women down. That's not acceptable. You're coming up with all kinds of reasons and excuses. I've got a problem with that. Because part of it makes me think, and I'm speaking to men directly, part of it makes me think that, well, you just aren't feeling the idea of having a woman as president, and you're coming up with other alternatives and other reasons for that. And this is rustled some feathers. Ruffled some feathers. I confused rustled some jimmies and ruffled some feathers. There we go. And what I've heard is that, he's singling out black men, which is true. He did, because it was a specific appeal to black men. And the problem with the black vote is that the black vote is not a monolith. Shocking, right? I know. Wow, they're people. But Obama's privilege is showing there because obviously he's highly educated. He's done very well for himself. And much like the divide between, we split college-educated white men and non-college-educated white men, and we split non-college-educated white women and college-educated white women, but we don't split the black vote or the Latino vote the same way, and they're far more diverse votes, and this is something of the problem with what Obama said. He's falling into the trap of slicing and dicing people into identity categories. And he's trying to shame men, but especially black men, into voting for a woman instead of persuading people to vote for Kamala Harris. And here's the problem with that, right? We all know there are different ideals for men and women in society. And we all know that there are different stereotypes between men and women in society. And we know that black women get the double whammy of the racial stereotypes and the gender stereotypes. So black women, stereotypes of black women include, this is from the Wikipedia entry on it, depictions which portray them as welfare queens or depictions which portray them as angry black women who are loud, aggressive, demanding, and rude. Laziness, submissiveness, backwardness, lewdness, treachery, and dishonesty are stereotypes historically assigned to African Americans. And the challenge with that is that treachery, dishonesty, backwardness, laziness. The challenge with that, specifically facing Black women, is the positive assumptions that are made about women as a whole and how they backfire horrendously when a woman is running for a leadership position like president. And so I maintain that Obama's got it backwards. It's not, as he said, that Black men just aren't feeling the idea of having a woman as president, and you're coming up with other alternatives and reasons for that. I think that what it really is that the internet at large and the Trump campaign driving the anti-Harris rhetoric are successfully leveraging stereotypes to just dig into people's, lizard brains to convince them that Kamala Harris is all the reasons not to vote for that particular woman, leveraging both positive stereotypes of women in general and negative stereotypes of Black people, specifically Black women. And there's a nasty paradox. Megan Della Camina, a women's leadership expert, talks about the paradoxes of power as they affect women. And it's particularly nasty for Black women because the advantage that female leaders and female politicians have is that women are presumed to be more ethical and virtuous than men. It's not true. Studies have shown it's not true. Some studies show that women are more concerned about ethics, but that does not mean that women are more ethical than men. In-group, meaning intragender variation, meaning some women are honest, some women are dishonest, some men are honest, some men are dishonest. There's really no inherent women are more virtuous than men. But because of the false belief that women are more virtuous than men, women are expected to be more virtuous than men. Therefore, if Donald Trump and Kamala Harris behave exactly the same, they don't, but hear me out, Harris will be perceived to be more dishonest than Trump, even if they are equally truthful, because the bar for her is higher. Now, Trump lies his ass off, but people, I've heard CNN did this thing where they asked 11-year-olds their opinion on the political candidates, and you could tell these kids were mimicking what their parents said. And this one little boy, they showed him a picture of when you see this person, what comes to mind? And it was a picture of Kamala Harris. And the boy just said, liar. Now, compared to Trump, but not compared to Trump. That's not how people think. They compare Trump to what we expect from male leaders. And male leaders are allowed to be more morally gray than women, not only because there's a lower expectation for men to be good and pure and virtuous, but also society encourages male leaders to break the rules, right? That chaotic good type leader is really lifted up by our society. Whereas women are expected to adhere to the rules because that's what they're supposed to be. And come on, it's just easier, right? This is the problem for female politicians. Female politicians. This is the problem. That to be a politician, you have to shade. You have to persuade. Sometimes when you're a lawyer, as Kamala Harris was, you have to present the best case you can make, which means a particular version of truth, of facts, right? And because we live in a world where nobody's dealing with the same facts anymore, it's not just different opinions on the facts. The facts are very complex and people get them selectively and in an incomplete way. And because people have a false amount of certainty for how well they understand certain issues, we're not dealing with the same set of facts. So it is extremely easy to brand Kamala Harris a liar, which violates not only the increased moral burden that women leaders face, it plays into stereotypes about Black people and specifically Black women. And then it also, people generally want politicians. They believe politicians are liars. And so, if she's saying she's more honest than Trump, well, she's lying even more because all politicians lie, right? You see the interconnecting stereotypes. And that's why I say that it's not that people don't want to vote for a woman and they find reasons not to, as Obama claimed. It's that the woman that people will feel comfortable voting for does not exist. Because as Megan Della Camino, Women Rising is the name of the book that gets into this, if anybody's interested in picking it up. The paradoxes of power, the requirements of a leader are incompatible with the requirements of a proper or respectable woman. See that? Which means Obama's got it backwards. It means he shouldn't be out there saying, you don't want to vote for a woman and you're coming up with reasons. He has to understand that all campaigns do is they test messages and see if they're effective. They don't care if they're sexist or racist or anything, as long as they work and they don't get caught being sexist and racist. And the reason that I'm calling out Obama specifically for this is he nailed Hillary Clinton with one of those talking points when they debated each other when they were both running for president and he ended up being the candidate for the Democrats, right? Because there was that "you're likable enough, Hillary" moment. And that was a direct hit on another paradox of power, that as women's competence goes up, their likability goes down. It's the whole bitch thing. And there's a reason I don't like the word bitch, right? Because of that. Because in order to be a strong leader, you gotta be a bitch, which means you're unlikable. And women have a higher likability burden in terms of being nice and kind, right? And so because women are assumed to be more virtuous as leaders and men are assumed to be more competent, women fall into the trap of trying to prove competence and ending up in the uncanny valley of she's a bitch. So you're likable enough, Hillary, was a jugular strike on that. I don't know if Obama to this day realizes that. If he did, he'd be better off going, I did that. I didn't realize how detrimental it was to my own daughters trying to lead in this world. No, he's just shaming other men, specifically other Black men. And here's the deeper problem here. Here's why I'm doing this on Manly Monday, okay? Because this is not a defense of women leaders so much as it is an examination of what Obama said. Here's the good stuff, okay? If you've watched to this point. If you don't, I'm gonna know. Obama is engaging in the politics of shame, right? And men overall, but especially the particular Black men that are less likely to be voting for Harris and more likely to be voting for Trump. And to be very clear, the vast majority of Black men are going to vote for Kamala Harris. Everybody's freaking out because it's 70% of Black men planning on voting for her instead of like 80%. So the majority of Black men are going to vote for Harris, or at least intend to right now. But that 30%, right? All they've known is shame. They're shamed because, as one guy put it to me this week, even if things are unfair, men are expected to succeed anyway. You're supposed to somehow overcome unfairness, and if you don't, I'm adding this part, he didn't say this part, there's a deep sense of shame because you failed. And that's a paradox, because if the situation is unfair, you can't overcome it. If it's unfair, it means you will win according to the rules, and then they'll change the rules so you lose. Right? Make sense? So we're giving women one paradox of prove confidence, you'll end up as a bitch. We're giving men another paradox, which is overcome the most unfair circumstances ever. Well, that's just not possible, right? But if you don't, if you're not fucking Batman and find that option C from bad option A and bad option B, well, you're a failure as a man. Men are supposed to overcome. Both of those are bullshit, okay? And that's the problem with what Obama said. That the men like him who have got good educations and have done well for themselves, they're voting for Harris. It's the men who think Trump's an asshole, but maybe, just maybe, he actually will put a bit of money in their pocket. I mean, the fact that they let him sign his personal name to those COVID checks, that people remember that. It was dishonest as fuck. But people remember that Donald Trump gave them money. He didn't. That was Congress that was controlled by the Democrats at the time that approved that money, because Congress must approve those sorts of payments. But Trump's name was on it. And if you're a low information voter who's struggling, that's powerful, psychology. So Obama's not speaking to men like him. He's speaking, let's face it, to the men that are more the stereotype, the ones who don't like Kamala Harris, not because she's a woman, but because she's a former prosecutor, which I don't even like to get into because it's so uncomfortable, because it's the idea of, over-policing and interactions, more interactions with the law in Black communities. I grew up in a majority Black neighborhood. I saw it firsthand. And I saw how I was treated differently than Black people. That's a true thing. It happens, right? With all authority, not just police. And the interesting thing about me is I was hyper visible in my own way because I looked decidedly different. So I knew that whole, you're not allowed to slip up, because if there's if there's 5 kids that look the same and I look different, or they look more similar to me, if we're all doing the same thing, they're going to turn around, see me first, and I'm going to get in trouble because I'm the most visible. And that's what happens to Black people who are minorities in their school, their work, their community, so on and so forth. The hypervisibility principle, right? But also these men that he's shaming are more blue collar. Non-college educated men are way more likely to vote for Trump. And there are some non-college educated Black men. This is not about them being Black. This is about them being non-college educated and the job prospects available for non-college educated men in America, right? So the shame tactic doesn't work. And here's why, okay? Here's my own little bit. All this other stuff was data found elsewhere. Here's my addition to the discourse, okay? Trying to shame a guy into compliance isn't going to work when life has already taken all his pride, right? He's so used to being shamed that it's not persuasive. The whole world's shaming him to the point that these guys believe that women are protected and lifted up by society and men get nothing. And whether that's true or not, that's what they honestly believe, okay? They have been not only never able to develop healthy self-esteem, they have been actively stomped to the point that all they know is shame. So more shame, just add it to the pile, right? It's not going to work. It's just part of the haze. It's another guy who doesn't get it telling them their business. And that's why, every pastor like Raphael Warnock, what's his name? Wendell Pierce, the actor, Like the guy who was on Suits and what was it though? Was he on The Wire? Or he's been in a bunch of stuff. Oh, he's on Elspeth. But they all went like, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't agree. And this isn't just a certain type of men, okay? This is men who are disappointed in the way their life has turned out. They feel like they failed that paradoxical test of facing unfair circumstances and winning anyway. And so this idea that they're finding other reasons to not vote for women. They've lived their lives with people finding every reason in the book to not vote for them. Is it spite? Is it vengeance? On a case-by-case basis? Maybe. A lot of the time, I just think that it's internalized stereotypes. It's, well, she's a liar. She's dishonest. She doesn't say what she really means. It's all the stereotypes that we're already primed. All of us are primed by society to have biases this way. And we actively have to correct for that. And I get branded as a bitch at such a low bar, not just by men, by other women too. And I have to remind myself that it's, not worse for other women to do it. It's just more frustrating because we get all these stereotypes. And what I realize is the women that do it, the women that succumb to that, oh, she's just a bitch. She's just being unfair. She's just dishonest. She's just mean. She's cruel, right? They just haven't had their time in the barrel yet. And once you do, you can't unsee it, you can't unhear it, and it changes your whole perspective. And just doing a cycle of vengeance and retribution, doing, the vindictiveness waltz, the shame shimmy, right? It's not going to do any good. It's just going to create another round of, well, fuck you. You're going to get this reactance of, no, that's not why I'm not voting for Harris. She's a liar, and they're going to recycle all the reasons because society has given them the message that, well, this is just what women are, or this is just what women who failed to meet that incredibly high moral bar are. They're bitches, right? They're lying bitches. They're mean bitches. They're dishonest bitches. They're manipulative bitches, right? What's a bitch if it's a man? A man who's weak, right? Which is why Trump spins out when anybody suggests he's weak. Because Trump can be the biggest son of a bitch on the planet and not violate male leadership norms as long as he's strong to the point of being a cartoonish bully. He can lie his ass off as long as he's steamrolling somebody, bowling someone over, mocking someone mercilessly, or otherwise being this cartoonish idea of cruelty that we associate as strong in men. Again, unless you're a guy who's been on the receiving end of guys like that, and then you're like, fuck you. And this perspective taking is what Obama failed to do effectively, because he saw himself as a black man talking to other black men instead of recognizing, dude, you were the first black president. Your results are not typical. You went to Harvard, right? Like, not the same. You got some of the education that makes us aware of these paradoxes. right? And I take this stuff and I don't teach it the way that most people teach it, because they do it from the focus of this is the bad stuff that's happened to women. And I don't think that's effective. I think you need to show the point counterpoint, right? You have to show this is how it affects men too, because it just makes sense that there's always a trade-off there, that if women are affected by stereotypes in this way, and let's face it, only the women who attempt to be, that top 10%, that top 1% are really going to have serious problems with this stuff. All the men who don't end up in that top 10% regarding leadership, all those men have been bullied by the top 10%, and they're told this is right and good, this is the way of the world, get tough, do better, beat the odds. And so Obama just added more shame into the ocean of shame that is their existence. And this is how I'd come at it from both ways. First of all, I felt this way about Hillary Clinton, and I still think this is not just a feeling, this is actual thought. I thought Hillary Clinton should have come out and said, you know what? I've made a lot of mistakes, right? I went after Monica Lewinsky because I was panicked and it was one income, and I went after her as the wife who'd been cheated on, not one woman empathizing with another woman. And I, whatever other things she has to mea culpa. I, supported the war in Iraq because at the time I said, they were like, you have to show a woman will send troops in a battle. You have to be tough. It wasn't my instinct. I did it because I was supposed to. You know what? I've made a lot of mistakes. And I've already made those mistakes. And I'm not gonna make those mistakes again. That's why experience counts. That's why you should vote for me. Because I've already made those mistakes, so I won't make them as president. I have learned, I have listened, I have heard you. You have taught me things. That's why my positions have changed, because I talked to you, the people. I went down to Pennsylvania and found out how important fracking is to the local economy. And, then you can weave in you can have green energy, a transition to a green economy without banning fracking. You can add that, but you have to do the mea culpa. This is what I'm hearing to these guys that are in shame. That, I've learned, I've improved, I've grown, right? Because that people are more understanding of, it's moral to own your mistakes. So you regain that virtue advantage, right? All right. I've seen people. She admitted she was wrong. He admitted he was wrong, right? He apologized. I accept that. Most people love a redemption arc, right? But you also gotta talk about this stuff and remind people that you're not voting between Kamala Harris and an ideal and Donald Trump and an ideal. You're voting for the person who you think is gonna do the best job. You've got to look at them as leaders. And that's really hard because by the bitch standard, she's a bitch and he's not. Though the thing is, he kind of is. He's whiny, he's thin-skinned, he's a crybaby, he's a sore loser. And if the surrogates really made him, this is the war of who can make their opponent the bigger bitch. And they've sort of missed that opportunity with Trump. Not that he's crazy, not that he's in decline. No, he's a whiny little cuck, right? No, he did the cucking. Where's his wife? Why isn't she supporting him? That's no man. A man whose wife won't show up for his stuff? That's what? Like, she put out a book undermining his bona fides on abortion during the election. He tried to bribe Stormy Daniels to not talk during the election. Like, why is this guy being so run? You know, that's the playing the stereotypes that the Trump campaign does so well. And the Democrats are constantly on defense against. And is that ethical, right? Is it fair? Is it compounding stereotypes? No, it's not ethical. No, it's ethical if by ethics in politics means you win, therefore it's ethical. But is it fair? No, these stereotypes are shitty, and compounding stereotypes makes it worse for everybody in the long run, right? Is it effective? Yeah, you're likable enough, Hillary, right? And Harris just started to do that, but because, he's a weak man with dictators. But it's only going to be effective if they're really willing to get down in the muck. And she can't do it, because the minute she does it, then she's a bitch. Other people have to take the bitch bullet for her, right? They have to be the ones who are like, oh, that's not okay. That virtue advantage in the short term for women is a disadvantage in the long run. But in order to reach men, we have to reach through that shame and help pull men out of it. And any message that adds to it is not going to be effective. And that's, first of all, I think Obama's wrong on the facts. But I think that also you can be wrong and effective, right? As opposed to being wrong and ineffective. And I just think that his own humility, which is usually a good quality, didn't allow him to see how anomalous not only his experiences, but the lens that he brings to these discussions. Because even comparing themselves, any black man who compares himself to Barack Obama, he's going to come up short, because first black president, right? And because it's so hyper competitive, we know men are overrepresented at the top of society success, right? We don't talk as much, and that's the patriarchy, right? But we don't talk enough about men are also overrepresented at the bottom, the worst failures, right? Women are more sort of distributed in the middle. And we have to look at the whole picture, right? Because if you're one of those guys down here, non-college educated men in America, it's a lot of shame. There's a lot of shame ending at the bottom. Now I got that fucking Drake song started from the bottom. Terrible fucking song. Don't like Drake. Fuck you, Aubrey. We're going to close there. Remember, Deranged Opossum Fall. Also, Spider-Man shit. Give to Eileen's aunt's crowdfund. Let's do this. We're getting there. We got time. But sooner than later, everybody will relax better if we do it sooner, right? The longer that house stays precarious, the more likely there's going to be another storm that's going to erode more soil. So the sooner they can get to work, the better. Otherwise, thanks for watching Manly Monday.